in 1980, in 1982, God called me to work with the deaf. When I say work with the deaf, in truth, He called me to preach. I've been called to preach all these many years, and now, I'm grateful for it. I've always believed personally that you provide. God called me to preach, and whatever ability I have is what I use. Now, it doesn't mean that I had the ability then that I have today. My ability to work with the deaf was developed over the years. If I talk to someone, there are many things I've done as a young man, as a young preacher, as a young person trying to burden other people, what God has called me to do. There are things then that I probably wouldn't tell you today to do. Does that make sense? So in other words, experience has been my teacher. And experience is really a wonderful tool in our ministry. Just to get a little bit of background about my life, just so you understand where we've been. In 1982, when I surrendered to preach, I was at Oklahoma Baptist College. I did not know very much sign language at all. My grandmother was deaf and blind. My mother was hard of hearing. My uncle was hard of hearing. My other uncle was hard of hearing. Then it comes down to my family. My brother's hard of hearing. My sister's hard of hearing. And I'm hard of hearing. But I'm probably the only one that is fluent in sign language and fluent in the deaf culture. And so, now my grandmother was a wonderful woman. She wrote 4 books. She was on poetry. She's been deaf and blind. I've always admired her. She's 4'8", had a strong hold on my life. Not just on my heart, but she had a way of making sure that I lived with her the last 2 years of high school. And she had a strong hold on me. Being deaf and blind, she had one eyeball. She skid him out when she was a young girl on the way to school in Olive Hill, Kentucky. And so Grandma had a stronghold on me. It didn't matter what other people were doing. You're going to do what I tell you to do. That's kind of Grandma was. And she was a wonderful woman. And I thank God for her. She wouldn't die. Her kidneys failed for over 60 days before she would go to heaven because she kept calling out for Scotty to come and see her. And I was in Oklahoma, so I couldn't make that trip just spontaneously. But that's my little bit of background. But now in the ministry-wise, God has blessed and allowed my wife and I to work with the deaf all these many years. We have more than 17, 20 deaf ministries and churches established all over the world. And so God's been good to us, and I'm thankful for that. When there is someone on every continent, or the last continent is soon to be fulfilled, as the one that's on deputation. I have another young man who's on deputation to go to Peru. He's not from here, but we're working on it, and God is soon to send him there. So someone is going around the world everywhere, and they are constantly in contact with me, and I'm learning all the time. And I'm learning all the time. Even what I may say today, I may not use 5 years from now. So, but I will say some things that I'm firm about, and I really believe with all my heart. I'm going to try to share with you today about deaf relationships. In other words, relationships with people that are deaf. Now I'm speaking because so you all understand, I think I speak very well. I obviously can't hear myself. Last night our dog got out at 12:30 in the morning, and my son, when we come home, it was raining. I told my son, take the dog and put him in the cage from the outside. Don't bring him through the house. So he left the gate open. So last night I let the dog out. Then I'm not hearing the dog scratching the door now. So I'm wondering what's going on. So come find out, he ran off at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And so I'm running, and I don't have my hearing aids on. My wife comes out of the bed, and she flips the light because she knows I can't hear her. The garage door is open. She flips the light, and said, "What do you need?" And then when I said that, I was speaking too loud. I didn't think I was, but I didn't want. I started seeing lights on the neighborhood flicking up. Okay. I'm just kidding about that, but I do have to be careful that I speak loudly, sometimes too much. And so but I have 85, 95% hearing loss. So I've been blessed to be able to speak as well as I do, and I thank the Lord for that. And so, but through the years, I want to talk to you about the relationship with the deaf people. Developing relationship in general has to do. It is essential that you build relationships. I've seen so many people try to win them to Christ on the first appearance, and you never met them before. And the truth of the matter is, they were not always, but more often than not, people will say what you want to hear, and at least the deaf will. And there's like I understand. I don't work with Spanish people, but I understand Spanish people the same way. They'll smile and they'll give you what you want, and then after that initial relationship, that's it. You never hear from them anymore. Well, it's essential to build relationships. In the deaf world, we use this phrase, I want to help. In the religious world, we use the phrase, I want to help the deaf. Well, let me caution you about that. I don't hear too many people say this, but I want to caution you. I use the word help the deaf too. But I try to be careful about that, because that also implies that they need help. In truth, the deaf are thankful that they're deaf. Now, there are different types of deaf. There are different types of deaf that you'll deal with. You have to understand that also, what I'm saying. You might have some helpless deaf person, just like you have some helpless hearing person. And they're out there. Janet Nunn, she's not in here this morning, but Janet Nunn, the member of our church, she was born and raised in a well-to-do home, but she was basically home raised. Does that make sense? She never got out in the culture, and everything, her signs were homemade, and so and she had a little world she lived in, and so there are different types of deaf. Now, the deaf that I've been dealing with for the last number of years is the educated deaf. When I speak that way, I would caution you to be careful about saying, I want to help the deaf. Because if you say, I want to help the deaf, let me explain this way. Last year, I had the privilege to listen to Lou Baldwin. Lou Baldwin he's all his life in his ministry has worked with black people in black churches. Lou Baldwin said this. He said, and I went to his session every time. Now, he wasn't the only one speaking. I heard several of his men speak. And I thought, when I heard him speak and I heard him say some things, what he said about black culture, I said, I wish that we had a deaf man who was the spokesperson for deaf people in a hearing world, like Lou Baldwin is. Because Lou Baldwin explained it this way. There's several things he said, many good things he said, but one thing he said, there are some things that is acceptable in a white culture that is not acceptable in a deaf culture. For example, I'm limited on time, so he said that in a church setting, it would be normal to have a Korean church. You have a separate Korean church service. Does that make sense? You have a separate deaf service. That's normal. You have a Spanish service, okay? But you do not. So you have a separate deaf. You have a separate deaf service. You have a separate Spanish service. You have a separate Korean service. But you don't have a separate black service. That's what he said. Now, I think you all understand that. Because you all must be shaking your head. Wow, maybe never thought about it that way. But now that, when he said that, I said, that's obvious. Okay? So in the deaf world, so often it is, the deaf are looked upon as someone that needs help. So when they do get educated somewhat, they're constantly looked at as somebody that needs help. How are you doing? I always tell people will ready to open their mouth really wide. I'm not used to reading wide lips. So I tell them, I don't, sometimes it depends on who it is, but I might be a little facetious, or I might say, I read lips, I don't count cavities. Some people, they speak real loud. How are you doing? I'm deaf, so it don't matter how loud you feel. Everybody's looking at you. You look like a fool. And really, when you point them out it makes them feel, it's a sign for that. Or little, and so humiliated. And that's not what humiliated is, but that's feeling of little feeling low. But be careful about using the word help. I want to help the deaf. Because in that sense, it is essential that if you make them feel that they need to be helped, and then you have already looked at them in a certain way, that unbeknown to you, you are looking. I gotta stand in this position. Wait till I get a picture, okay? Okay, I'm about ready to show you something. If you move on, okay, and come over here for a minute. Hold this. I gotta keep this recorded. So you have this is two individuals, and what happens is oftentimes I've told people, and when you look at them as I gotta help them, you're looking at them this way. You say, no, I'm not. Well, you're kind-hearted, you're big-hearted, you want to help, but that's what you're doing. And what you need to do, you need to get it this way. And when you do that, you start having respect for the people. Okay, let me talk to you about a little bit. And be careful about forcing your opinions on them, especially the deaf people that know what that are, because you can't speak to them, doesn't mean they don't know or they're not educated. I don't particularly care that I have a master's. I don't particularly care that I have an honorary doctorate. I don't. I really don't. It doesn't make a difference to me at all. But here's what the problem is. Many people will look upon the deaf as, oh. But when you say you have a master's, oh. Let's be honest. So I know many deaf people that are trying to get their master's for that very reason. And because it just puts them in a different position in the eyes of a hearing people. And so, but here, let me say this. Forcing your opinion on them is going to be the very first way you're going to lose their, it's going to be the first way you're going to lose their interest in you. And so, relationship with deaf members, seek permission. You got to get permission from them if you want to share. You're trying to establish a ministry in your church, and you want to help your ministry grow. If you want to reach the deaf, and you start getting this information, and you start sharing this information to other people, that will make them mad. Deaf people are not happy when you share their information. And so be careful about it. Always seek their information before that. Okay, now, developing trust and respect is essential. Now, how do you do that? You've got to go out and get involved with their life. One thing that really, as I've been doing this for now for almost 28 years and 30 years, and I see this quite often, that hearing people will come to church. They will do their work in church, and they say, please come to church. It's almost self-serving. They come to church, but they never have anything to do with the deaf in their world. Does that make sense? And the deaf people like to have their choice of interpreters. Nothing personal, but there are people that we understand. There are some people we understand. There's some people we understand well. There's some people we understand in a mediocre way. Let me put it this way: a Snellen chart. How many know what that is? What do they call it? Okay, if you go to the eye doctor, you got those A, B, C's, and all those. There's about 20 certain letters they use. And when you go in there and you look at that chart, and they're going to ask you, they're going to find out what your vision is. Thank you. They're going to tell you what your vision is based on how far down the chart you can go. Now, what I've told our sign language class is that I use my hand quite a bit, so I'm trying to manage. Okay. So here here's the chart, and I'm trying to help our interpreters become clear. Does that make sense? And so what happens is when an ASL 1 student comes in, they say, I want to be an interpreter. They're way over here. So we deal with that, and we try to bring that to a point where it can be clear. Now, if they're not careful, to be satisfied with that chart, they're clear, but then they get back over here. So they constantly got to be educating themselves, training themselves, developing themselves so that they can be better interpreters. Because even my wife is a certified interpreter, Terrell Johnson's a certified interpreter, and they both have to constantly be educated on 20 CEUs every year. Continuing education units, meaning they have to go to workshops anywhere around the country, and those cost money. And so for those of you who think that being an interpreter is nothing, well, you pay $1,200 for your interpreters. You pay $1,200 for your interpreter certification, and you have to study as many books as high as my hip. And that's just the beginning. And that doesn't pass your test. So you don't have to have a degree. You have to have skill. But you still have to have knowledge about a lot of things. My wife said she's a valedictorian of her graduating class and 335 students in her high school, and she said that's the most difficult test she's ever taken because all the answers are right. And so respect the deaf's desire to have an interpreter, and what they ask for, let it be what they want. And so I've had to face issues with that, because here my wife always says this: it's not about you, it's about them. And I like that, because don't let your feelings get hurt if I have to come home and I ask, let's switch this interpreter. I remember several years ago I heard Harold Clayton preach for the first time over 25 years ago. I heard Harold Clayton preach on turtle, the tortoise and the hare. Man, I heard that message that changed my life. It was over 25 years ago, and I got to hear him again a couple years ago. And man, I haven't seen him for 25 years, and I was looking forward to hearing him. And then I had an interpreter change, and I had someone come in my office and really lambast me. So I just took it, but then I said, I took it as well as I knew how. But I still feel that I said, can I be blessed with a good sermon? I made the interpreter schedule for this week. Because I want to be able to enjoy this meeting just like all the hearing people do. And so, since I'm the one going to be there most of the time, every night, every morning, so I make this service, I didn't do it based on. Now I'm trying to train young people at the same time. So I've got two. So I want to be able to step back and enjoy this with ease, like looking at the eye chart. I don't have to try to, oh yeah, they mean this. So there's constant working on interpreters. So let the deaf let them, if you want to develop a relationship with them, that will help them. Ask them, who do you want to interpret for you? And sometimes they say, I don't mind, I don't care. And so but give them a choice, okay? Developing a relationship with the deaf is very important. Bossing the deaf is a sure way to lose them. Visit their home and invite them to yours. Visit their homes, invite them to yours. Become a part of their life, their community, what they do. I have spent literally hundreds, if not hundreds of hours that I've been here in 3 years in the deaf community. And we talk about building a deaf community. I understand we have a pastor or two here this morning. The best way you're going to build your ministry is not to set a sign outside and say, we have a deaf ministry, we interpret. I promise you that it's just going to be a blind eye every time. You have to go out into the community, and you have to be a part of what they do. And the next thing you know, here's what they'll do. They'll be over here. I can guarantee you, they'll be over here. They'll see you. They're kind of, who's this? And then they'll be over this person. They'll be talking to this person. Who's that? And then they get, oh yeah, some people know you, some people don't. And little by little, begin their guard, their shield of protection will be put down, and they will begin to trust you. Since I've been here 3 years, there are so many hours in the evenings that I've been places off of the clock and gone to deaf activities. Last week on the news, I woke up at 5:30 and I watched the news at 6, and I heard about a death of a 10-year-old the previous night. Excuse me, a 10-month-old baby the previous night. I didn't think any much more about it, but then I got a phone call from a friend of mine who's deaf and told me that that baby that drowned the previous night was deaf. Their parents were deaf. I have never met them. Their children were deaf. The family's deaf. And so I immediately sought contact to find out who they are, where they live, and how can I reach out and minister to them. And so I did, and because I had a contact, because I already have established contact in the deaf community with Monday, this coming Monday, we're having someone come to my class who's got a master's. He's a deaf man, got a master's in working with the deaf. Let me not get off of that. But here's this family, and I was going to say that for a reason, but let me get back to this. But that family, I was able to attend their funeral Saturday afternoon. And they found out that I was a pastor. Unfortunately, they had a hearing pastor. I say unfortunately because the family's deaf. They had at first, they did not have an interpreter. Think about it. Your own mom and dad had no interpreter. Yesterday, I received a call from a text from one of our students who went to a funeral of a man that I was able to lead to the Lord, and she told me that there are 7 deaf people here. Listen to this: mom, dad, deaf. Dad dies. Son provides no interpreter for his deaf friend to come to the funeral. Gene Reynolds, one of our deaf members, happened to be there and happened to see one of our students, and it wasn't quite qualified, but the best they could do. And here it is. Mom and dad grew up in the deaf world, went to Tennessee schools for the deaf, and the mom was in the Hall of Fame for basketball skills and things like this. Very good. But yet the family provided no interpreter for them and their friends at the funeral. The mother had no interpreter. She texted me. She told me that these people were here and had no interpreter. I told her, I texted her back and said, make the best of it. She stepped up to the plate and took care of it. And it's unfortunate, but that happens all the time. So having understanding a little bit about their history will help you understand. So that's why I say it's very, very important to reach them and gain their trust. Go into their community. Go into where they are. Go to their activities. I promise you, the deaf people won't bite. They don't bite. But they'll be suspicious. And they might, because of the trust, the way people have taken advantage of them through the years. Now, let me say this. Now, this is not something that I've given, but this is something I borrowed from a hearing pastor in Georgia. I threw these pennies down on the floor a while ago for a very simple reason. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 14 says, thou shalt not curse the deaf. Now, I want you to think about this. That word curse means to make light of. It means to be lightly esteemed or trifling, like they're nothing. So in other words, thou shalt not make light of the deaf. Thou shalt not be, they're not non-essential. They're not important. You know, we make much of widows in our church, at least when we should. But you know what? It's interesting. Leviticus 19:14 says, thou shalt not curse the deaf. In that one place in the Bible, thou shalt not curse the deaf is simply don't make light of the deaf. I'm afraid far too often we give the deaf the unimportant place in the building. We give them the leftovers. We give them a place in the church that really it can be dirty, trashy, and secondhand. And I would encourage you, if you want to reach the deaf, give them respect. Things like that will make a difference. I had a 94, I spent 23 years in Oklahoma City. And when we were in Columbus, Ohio, for 2 years, we established a deaf service. And 1 year, we developed that to 35 to 40 deaf. The average income of those deaf people were anywhere between $40,000 to $50,000. These were not welfare deaf. These were educated deaf people that had masters, Hall of Fame, and a founder, one of the co-founders of the $22 million deaf complex, more than $22 million. And the man called me, he's 94 years old. He called me and told me after I had left, they had taken all the deaf and they put him into a place where, where he was very uncomfortable. He's 94 years old, and he no longer, now he needed, particularly him, he needed a good chair so he could be comfortable. So he would go to church and he'd be very uncomfortable. He called me and said, I quit going because I'm not comfortable. And because it became secondhand, you immediately lose respect. And so, and when you don't have someone. Now, we're fortunate and blessed here at Temple Baptist, as well as all the ministries I've been in. If your church has someone capable of ministering to the deaf, and they can preach, like I'm fluent in the language, and then it would be best to use the deaf and use that person and allow them to have a separate deaf service. Having an interpreter is like going to Mexico or going to Spain or going to Japan and constantly using an interpreter. Now, I was thinking about this yesterday, Miss Polly. I don't know if this is accurate, but it hit me yesterday that, you know, we have people going to Mexico, we have people going to Japan, we have people going to all different places around the world. But it hit me yesterday that, just last night, that there is collectively more, probably, if you talk about one national people, I'm talking about deaf, we have probably more people in this place wanting and desiring to reach the deaf people than any one person or any one group. I may be wrong on that. But the deaf, is interesting. The deaf, if it's given a choice between if a black deaf man and a black culture, or a black deaf man and a deaf culture, where do you think the deaf will go? They're going to go to the deaf culture. They're not going to go to the black culture. They're going to go to the deaf culture. And it's good because, you know, many times families get together. Deaf people don't want to go be a part of that family outing because they are not feeling welcome to that family. 90% of all deaf people do not have parents that know sign language. That's amazing. And so, you know, reaching out to help the deaf, and I say this, when I say help the deaf, again, it comes back to reaching the deaf. I would just caution you. I have used the word help, but I would caution you about in your mindset, oh, I want to help them. If you look at them as handicapped, I don't think I'm handicapped. I can probably get in a boxing match with you and just give you a competition. I can play football and I can probably try to break your arm. I just feel like I can do anything you can. The only thing I can't hear is that you can't hear it. And by the way, try to be careful about the fact that you may think that they don't understand. And here's how I know that you don't think they understand. When you keep repeating the same thing over, they've already heard 5 times. How do I know that? Because I used to do that. That's something I was talking about many years ago. I repeat it. Well, many years ago I'd done something and I realized that I'm not helping them. I'm not helping my case by thinking they don't understand. And sometimes, for me, I'm hard of hearing. I'll ask you once because I don't hear it. I'll ask you twice, but on the third time I'll quit asking you. Somebody said that's because you're pride. Well, I don't want to bother you. And so the fact of the matter is everyone in here has got a certain amount of pride. And but after 3 times, I don't want to bother you. And so there's certain things I'm often misjudged by because of the culture. I'm very expressionate. Somebody might think I have an attitude. The truth of the matter is, and be careful, by the way, deaf people have a lot of expression. And you think they got an attitude when really they don't. They're just expressing something. So, okay, let me say this, and I'll let you ask me some questions. You have sources of reaching out to in your community. We have in our community. I've been just about if I can't think of anything that I haven't been to, but in our community, I have gone out to I've got on the internet. The first thing I do when I come to town, Knoxville and Columbus, Ohio, the very first thing I do is go meet the big shots. Now, I'm not afraid of them. I'm not intimidated by meeting them. But in your community, you might have a sign language class in a community college. That would be a great place to start. if you don't know sign language, and then you little by little begin to hear about their activities, and you go to those activities, and you're developing your language, and they see your interest in them, and they see your heart's desire, and they begin to trust you, and they want it takes time, but it can grow. 35 to 40 deaf in 1 year in Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, Ohio is the 4th largest city in the nation with deaf population. An amazing place to be. Columbus, Ohio has, I said 22 million, it's more like $50 million complex that's owned by the deaf. It's a retirement home, 8 floors high. It holds over 300 deaf people, and there's over 151 units paid for by the deaf. Across the way, there's a nursing home. The building supplied, the medical and all that is paid for by the deaf. And then over in the back, there's actually 2 buildings for the complex for people to stay in. But deep in the back, there's a community center for the deaf, all paid for by the deaf. So the more you get out to reach the deaf, you're going to find out that deaf people can pay for things. And it's one of my biggest beeps. One of my biggest beeps is trying to give deaf people free things. Everything we've done here since I've been here, we paid for. We paid for, except my salary. I'm trying to make myself worthwhile by recruiting, bringing in students for the college, and hopefully we got 16, 17 students there. So it's the start. Once we get a good promotion, try and bring in hopefully someday we can even have deaf people come to college, and that would be a wonderful thing. And then the hearing people will begin to see, wow, the deaf people just like me. And once you get to know them, you find out they are. Okay, now basically summing up what I'm trying to say to you today is develop a relationship with them. Get on the internet in your area, find out where they are, and the deaf people will spread the word for you. When I got in Columbus, Ohio, I immediately went to the big shots. When I say that, I mean the president of the association. I went to that retirement home, and I met them. And you know what the funny thing is? He called me. The man who runs that place, he's the president of the Tennessee School for, the Ohio School for the Deaf. He's on the board. He's the chairman of the board. He called me a couple months ago and asked my opinion of someone who can come and be superintendent of the Ohio School for the Deaf. Does that make sense? In other words, he was asking for my opinion about certain things about how we can get a new superintendent in the School for the Deaf in Ohio. And so you develop relationships that way, and people begin to trust you. Okay? And we've been blessed to have a School for the Deaf here. And without going into detail, I don't have all the time to explain it to you. But these are just different places where you can go. Solid Word Ministry is very well known. It happens to be one of the only independent Baptist ministries that help ministries locally, local churches. They are set up to help your ministry. If you're a pastor, okay, you're a pastor. If you call Solid Word Ministries, they will come, and they have missionaries on their board. They have missionaries in their program that will come and help you. They'll sit there for a month and help you. They'll be in an RV trailer, and they'll do the work. They have mission support, and of course they have mission support for the most part, and they will come and help you. And they're just small. I mean, I can give them a hub offering. They're not rich, especially gas prices today. And so, but anyway, let me ask you. Basically, just saying, developing relationships have gone a long, long, long way in helping me reach the deaf. And I know that if you reach the deaf, you're developing relationships and trust. They will begin to come and trust you, and then you can show them Christ. Okay, does anyone have any questions for me this morning? Anyone? Yes, ma'am. You know, that's a good question, because I personally, it would be better set up here, I think. Now, let them make their choice, okay? So the question was, should the deaf be able to sit up the front? Is it best to sit up the front or sit in the back? And if they have one deaf person, let them ask them. But generally speaking, if you have several, I think it's the best to have front, because here's why. I like to see their passion. I like to see their tears. I like to see those little things that you can't see when you're in the back. And so I like the idea of being a place. You know, the sad thing is, I was thinking about this last night. If many of the churches I've been to, I've been in 3 churches. I've served the Lord in 3 churches. Many of the things we do with deaf sections over here, the hearing singing specialists are over there. So what's happened? The podium's in the way, and we don't see it. And so we can't hear, and now we can't see. So what would be ideal situation? Ideal situation is allow the deaf to be on the side of the church that allows the deaf to be able to see since they can't hear. And so now the problem with you may have an interpreter is now if you're very expressionate, you're getting a lot of attention off the preacher. Okay? And so, but at the same time, the deaf people are, your good interpreting has to do with your expression. But you don't want to be so expressionate that all the attention's off the preacher. And so the professional and the accurate way to do it is really, now we don't do this, I've never been in any service where we do it, but on a professional, secular standpoint, the interpreter will be right here, speaker will be right here. Okay? But that doesn't happen in the religious circles. So the best thing to do is we have a rotation, and I'm working on this in our church here, is that we have someone, the best thing in a professional secular standpoint is to have an interpreter right here, and you have a second person sitting in a chair right here. Okay? Now, what we try to do is in this place, we have a little distance to go. So I'm asking our interpreters soon to start sitting in the front row. Because they go for the 3rd row to get up there, it takes 30 seconds. Now, I don't quite take it, by the time that it gets started, 30 to 45 seconds. I was watching the clock last night, and I was noticing 30 to 45 seconds passed by before they actually got on to what the speaker was saying. So I was missing things. So, and I was missing things. They started what they felt was comfortable. Well, then I missed the preview, okay? So anyway, that's a good question. Ask them. Now, sometimes pastors don't want you to, but you try to, that's where you have to listen. One of the worst things deaf preachers do and deaf workers do, my pastor just doesn't understand. And let me tell you something, they never will. They never will. They never will. Nobody will understand. But the worst thing in the world you can do is have an attitude about it. And that's the worst thing you can do. I cannot accomplish a good thing for the Lord having a bad attitude about it. And I work with hearing people. And the best thing, I'll be honest with you. I'll be straightforward with you. It's very difficult for me to go from Oklahoma 23 years, having done all the training and all the discipling and all the things that we've done through the course of 23 years, to get it where it has to respect now, and then come and then go to another ministry, not here necessarily, but goes to somewhere else, and it's basically start all over again. I had to re-educate and retrain, reteach, and all that stuff. It's tough, because sometimes I want to roll my eyes. I want to, and then you just got to be patient. Okay, that's part of it. You're being deaf, and that's what happens. Just a minute. Yes, sir.
We have deaf people in our community.
Yes, sir.
I don't have a deaf interpreter. We don't have any deaf people at the church. So, how do you start? Where do you start?
Okay. Bring in. Okay, I have. You have deaf people in your community, but you don't have no deaf interpreter in your church to help with those deaf. There are several ways that I always tell people in order to help your church get a burden. Bring in a deaf choir. Deaf choirs are known to really touch people's hearts. We had a wonderful deaf choir in Oklahoma, and that choir is very expressive, wonderful choir, and they will go to church. I have seen pastors literally come Sunday morning, I never forget it. He come up, and this is several times, no, it was just one time. I have seen pastors come up profusely bawling so hard when he heard my wife's song, I Am Deaf, Do You Care? And when that song was put together done by the deaf, we got half hearing, half deaf. And that was done by the deaf. That pastor bawled so bad, so hard, that he could not give his announcements. And he had to turn it over to his assistant who sat down and still kept bawling. My heart was touched. And so you have a deaf choir come. There's deaf choirs. You want to talk to me, I can help you. You have bring a deaf choir and get your people burdened. Number two, start a sign language class. And sign language class will help. And then bring in a deaf preacher who knows how to reach the deaf. And I have a sermon called, I forget what the title of it is at the moment, but basically burdening your people for the deaf, why I should reach the deaf. But if you'll reach out the word ministries, they can give you a good start. Okay? Now, my philosophy has been developed and changed over the years. It has been changed through the years. And by the way, I can help too, as well as what I'm here for. But that's a good question. That's a very good question. There's actually 4 ways. What is it? It's deaf choir, sign language class, and what will happen is you may have 50 people. I'm just giving you a number. You have 50. When you're done, you only have about 15. That's okay. You weed them out, and those people, you have core people that are burdened. They can go start it. Let me say this to you real quick. My wife showed up in Oklahoma State University, and the first thing that deaf teacher said in ASL 1, she didn't have to go back to ASL 1, but I asked her to go back to ASL 1 to get a theory built, learn, understand structure and everything. So she could have been ASL 3. She was married to me. She was signing all the time. But she went back and began to scratch. The first thing that deaf teacher said to her, if you've learned in church, how many of you learned in church? Over 60, 70% of the students in that class raised their hand. They learned their sign language in church. And the first thing that teacher said was, throw it away. Now, the teacher had a problem. The teacher had a problem was that she didn't realize that those people wouldn't be there without the church. But she also had something right. That's her view of deaf interpreters in church. Okay? That's true. Many deaf interpreters in church are satisfied with what they are, and they never grow. They never learn. They never educate themselves to get better. Okay, I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to change the perception of the deaf about the church. Okay, yes?
Yeah, that's the problem we have in our church with our interpreters, that they sort of are satisfied. I mean, I'm always studying because, like John Barr said, I sound like a small boy. So that's okay. That's all right. Amen. So maybe 5-year-old boy, you know. But so I'm always studying and trying to learn more and more.
Yeah.
But it breaks my heart when I see the satisfaction, you know, of the other interpreters.
Yeah.
Don't want to learn more, don't want to, you know. And so when I can get them to some special training like ASLI, and they have Valley Forge, PA, and other things like that, and then they understand how much they don't know, it blows them away.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, I need to learn more.
I have my deaf students in the ASL 1. I got to close, but I had ASL 1 students to read the book Through Deaf Eyes. It's a secular book. When they got done reading that, they found out they were surprised and shocked at how much the culture was influenced by the hearing. In other words, they were oppressed by the hearing people. Forced, this is a true story, forced to stop signing, forced to read lips. And most deaf people cannot read lips. Oh, most deaf people cannot read lips. And listen to this, they fired every deaf teacher in America who used sign language to teach, fired them. And so that's one of the histories we deal with. And that's why I said, be careful about using, I want to help the deaf. Because you treat them like they have to be helped, you're going to get a bunch of welfare people. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, because I grew up on welfare. My mother and father divorced when I was 10, and we had to deal with that. But I understand as I grew up, but we had to deal with that. So I understand that, no problem at all. But just be careful how we can approach them. So I would say those 4 ways will help you. Okay? All right. Okay, God bless you. Let's pray. Father, we love you. Thank you for those that have a burden. We pray, Lord, that you'll help us to reach out to the deaf community with love and a desire to see them saved, that they'll all meet together one day in heaven, and we can rejoice together because of the gospel being spread to their community. And bless us, we pray these things in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, I have handouts if you want, so we can meet them at the door and we give them on the way out if they want it, but Miss Polly knows what she's doing. Okay, my wife, this is a hearing speakers using an interpreter, and these are 10 things that will help you in your trying to talk to the deaf in your community. There is a different way of talking and working with the deaf. Please understand, don't try to treat them like hearing people, not because they're lower, but because they have a different culture. They think differently. They do things differently. It's a culture altogether. It's different culture, and often misunderstood and judged, and hearing people often criticized what they don't understand. Okay? God bless you. You're dismissed.